Hello and welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm Zulfi here, joined by Kyle Ramnarine. We have finally reunited, but in true Run It Back fashion, the trio couldn't come together. Unfortunately, Cody is a busy man today. It is the start of NHL free agency when we are recording this, so he's in a frenzy with his other gig, as I'm sure a lot of people are. But Kyle and I had to reunite to bring you fine folks a podcast on the Raptors and what's going on with them. But before we kind of get into it, Kyle, how have you been, my friend? It's been a while since we've done this.
It's been interesting, man. You miss 1 week and then you miss the entire franchise turning upside down, bro. It's been crazy, but you and Cody tagged into the old swap. So, but I have a lot to talk about. The draft, Masai, and even right before we recorded this podcast, Raptors made a move. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to get my thoughts out there, yo.
Yeah, we kind of were on the wrong end of the whole PR move where they drop news on a Friday. So you have the whole weekend. So there's not too much crazy stuff that can come out of it. So since we are a midweek podcast, we like to release on Wednesdays. We did get to miss the initial reaction to some of this stuff, but we are going to do our best to give you guys our thoughts and opinions. Hopefully some new stuff and new insights on things like the Raptors draft, what happened there and what they were able to come out with, and our thoughts going into Summer League with these guys. And then we're also obviously going to touch on the big news that dropped with Masai Ujiri no longer being the president of the Toronto Raptors and what might be next for the team and organization. And then also go over what the Raps have been up to, or I guess in some cases not up to, with free agency opening up now and what else is happening around the league. But before we get into it, please be sure to like this video. Comment down below what you've made of the Raptors offseason so far. Obviously the draft, Masai, and then now free agency. And make sure you subscribe to the Raptors Republic Raptors so we can keep growing, reaching more people, and then hopefully getting more insights to you fine folks all the time. But Kyle, with everything that's happened, it is time to run it back. And honestly, where do you want to start here? We can go all these different ways. Free agency, the draft, Masai. What do you want to do first?
I was thinking we jump into the draft, bro, because at first, I know all our reactions at first were kind of surprising, at least unless you're Samson Folk going crazy over CMB.
I mean, he was surprised too. He was just thrilled at the same time.
He was so happy. I was so happy that he was so happy because that was just a wholesome moment that he was right. But for me, like, I was intrigued by the pick. CMB, like, okay, so I'm gonna come out and say, like, I don't know how to feel about the pick yet. I'm not going to say I hate the pick or I'm super, like, I really like the pick. I'm just kind of in the middle. I mean, like, even for me, when we first drafted Scotty, I was kind of the same way. I didn't know if we should have went. So I'm always down to be proven wrong or whatever. Like, we watched scouting reports. Samson made a whole 55-minute film room breakdown on CMB. If anyone's interested in watching that. But, we know what his strengths are. Defense, his footwork is great, athleticism is great. He needs some work on the shooting end. So I kind of see where the Raptors are going in this type of direction. For me, at least, though, the biggest thing for me is why I said I was on the fence is that I thought we should have drafted a big either with the 39th or the number 9 pick, just because I felt like that was a need we had to fill. But again, with this signing as well, too, it seems like we did check off a box or some things that we do need. But I don't know, man. How are you feeling about this pick? I know he does fill some boxes for us, and we are establishing sort of like our identity, but I feel like we had some better options at the 9 spot.
Yeah, look, if you're worried about a backup center, it's Sandro time in Toronto, baby. Look, we'll talk about the Raptors free agent signing of Sandro Mamukilashvili soon enough. But before we get into that, Kyle, just to recap, like you said, at number 9, the Raptors did take Colin Murray-Boyles. At number 39, they took Elijah Martin, and then they signed undrafted Chucky Hepburn out of Louisville on a 2-way contract. And yeah, kind of like what you're saying, I think a lot of the reactions by myself and other people is CMB was on the radar, I guess, for some folks, especially again like a guy like Samson and other draft coverage people. But for a lot of the general fan base, it was a little surprising when you look at names like Maluach or Carter Bryant, 2 other guys whose names were very much tied to the Raptors, at least in a sense of like what they could fill their needs with. And even at 39, like me and Cody talked about it, like if they don't address the big situation with number 9, well, what about Maxime Renault or Ryan Kalkbrenner or all these other guys at 39? And with the way the draft shook out, there was a chance for them to maybe end up with one of those guys. And Renault was available at 39 and ended up going Elijah Martin. So I think that part did catch some people by surprise a little bit. But the biggest thing for me that like I come out of this situation with is, even for all like the decisions of like not addressing positional need and whatnot, I think the Raptors did come out of this draft with something important, and that was an identity. And that is something I've wanted them to figure out for quite some time now. It's whether it's on the offense or defense for a young team that's kind of trying to turn the corner. You do have to hang your hat on something, and they're clearly going for it on the defensive end with versatile defenders in guys like Colin Murray Boyles or Elijah Martin. And the big thing with them is they're also very physical defenders. Guys are going to get up in your grill, be disruptive, and be able to get stops. Not only stops, but also kind of create turnovers and create easy offense going the other way. The Raptors had the number 2 defense last year after the All-Star break. Again, strength of schedule, all that kind of stuff. But they were able to find some success on that end. And adding these 2 guys, and then Chucky Hepburn, who was ACC Defensive Player of the Year on a 2-way, no slouch, I think they're building an identity through these guys. I understand the idea of like redundancy concerns potentially with CMB because like he's similar to Scotty and even Mobo in the sense where it's like you have this archetype of this switchy, versatile tweener big that can't really shoot and do the same things on offense as space the floor. But his finishing, his touch around the rim, those are all very high upside things. So I'm okay with the redundancy there a little bit because he's going to offer you so much potential and upside by also adding to a strength. So overall, I think the identity piece of it is what I'm coming out of this with most.
Yeah. So like I completely agree with what you're saying with the team having an identity. I feel like, that's something super important going forward, especially, because we want to make the playoffs or because we want to make at least make the play-in. Again, like I said before, like I'm not too like high on the picks, but I'm not hating on the picks. I'm very optimistic with each of them. Even with someone like Elijah Martin, people will kind of comment on his height being 6'2", but he is one of those gritty kind of get down in the mud type players where he will guard positions 1 to 2. He will play his heart out there. He is kind of sneaky athletic. Again, he did record a 35 introvert at the combine, so and a decent shooter as well. So again, I don't hate the picks. I am intrigued to see where we go when they get the reps in the 905, when they get the reps in on the floor. I do honestly think this team is building something special overall. So like that's why I'm not going to come out and say I hate this pick and we should have done something else. I do trust the team. I do see where we want to go. We are focusing on more a defensive sided team as well. And the 2019 Raptors were a very defensive heavy team, and look where that got us. We did have our star, but overall one of the best defensive teams out there. So I'm going to trust it. I like the picks. I like who we are, but I'm going to still keep my eye on to see how they develop. But overall, I'm not hating on anything. I'm excited going for it, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, quite honestly, with CMB and Elijah Martin and even Chucky Hepburn, the Raptors are adding dogs. Like you last year, it was I think what's his name? The guy who was on the Clippers before. Why am I forgetting his name? Point guard, Pat Beverly. Beverly said the Raptors didn't have dogs. Well, Elijah Martin and CMB are dogs as defenders. And look, with how much money you're paying the top end of this roster, it's their job to kind of take care of business offensively. Obviously, other guys like your first round picks in Scotty Grady Dick or Jacoby Walter, those guys have to figure it out off the bench and provide some bench scoring and things like that. But when you add a guy like CMB and Elijah Martin, those are that's helping the defensive floor raise of this team that I think in terms of potential was already quite high. At least it could be. So adding those guys who were dogs, in Elijah Martin's case, a proven winner. He had, I think Cody tweeted out, 115-32 record with the Gators since his sophomore season. He's also a national champion with the Gators. So a guy who has that pedigree as well. And I think a big thing beyond that is just when you have those guys who are dogs, it is that whole iron sharpens iron mentality type of thing. Competition can be healthy for young teams. And I think adding a guy like Elijah specifically, or even CMB, just alone in practice, things should be more intense. Things are going to be a bit more productive in practice for these guys. And I think that's exciting in and of itself. Both these guys, I think, have things to work on as well. I think for CMB, I would love to see a bit more work with his handle. He was good at getting to the rim, but it was a lot of straight line drives, north-south stuff. Obviously, a bigger physical guy, especially at his size. You don't necessarily need him to go kind of I guess, east-west. You do like that north-south thing. But I think it'd be nice to have a bit more handle and a bit more touch away from the basket a little bit. We saw it with a guy like Mobo where that rim success didn't translate to the NBA, but obviously Mobo was just dunking everything, whereas CMB has more touch and finish, so maybe he'll just kind of naturally work that way. And then also the three-point shooting for him is going to be a huge swing, 27% from his career in college. From three, didn't look all that great at the combine either, so we're going to want to see him develop there. He said he's been working on it, so that's interesting. And then Elijah Martin, like you said, the size is going to be a thing, and then he is not really exactly a table setter or playmaker quite like Jamal Shed, so it's going to be a lot of him filling in that 2 spot at times where he can, if he is going to get NBA minutes. But at the very least, for me, you, and Cody covering the 905, it'll be fun to see him in the G League. Yeah, these guys have stuff to work on, but I think if the floor of these picks is just dogs on this team that is going to help the defensive margins, I'm more optimistic than maybe some, and I think generally I'm looking at it positively.
Yeah, like overall, we're at, like you said, we added the dogs to the team with guys like Jacoby Walter, with guys like Mobo, with guys like Jamal Shed, all gritty type guys that will do the dirty work. And that for me, I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see how this kind of team develops, how our bench develops, who kind of gets into the rotation, and like all these guys will work for it. They're no slouches by any means. And with Elijah Martin, I know a lot of people are saying, he's 23, he's kind of a little bit on the older end for a rookie. But for me, I view that as experience. He kind of went through his years over there and he's more of an experienced player. So maybe, that could benefit the team as well. But for me, optimistic going into the season. I just hopefully the team works out. Hopefully these guys work out, and we see the kind of best results possible with the team we have at the moment.
Yeah, and looking at the rookies now that we know who's going to be on this roster, you kind of start looking towards Summer League. It's July 10th to 20th in Vegas. I know Samson Folk and some of the other fellas are going to be there covering it, so they're going to be providing good insights and coverage while they're watching. Yourself, me, and Cody are going to be trying to do some of that as well. Cody tweeted out a projected roster, I guess a depth chart for the Summer League team. One note that he did make later was that Jared Roden probably isn't going to be involved. He has shoulder surgery in April. It's around 4 to 6 month recovery, so it's not likely he'll be there for that. But if you look at it, like you have Jamal Shed, Jacoby Walter, Jamison Battle, Colin Murray Boyles, Ulrich Shamshe should be back from his partial MCL tear. And then you add Chucky Hepburn, Elijah Martin, and then you have Mobo, Cliff Omarui, who they picked up for Summer League as well. And then I'm going to try my best here to say this. Ana Waniwa, Tate Jones, a New Zealander. They picked him up from, I think, UC San Diego. I'm totally blanking right now on that, but he's another college guy they added to the Summer League roster. So a lot of interesting names there, especially in terms of the young rookie crop of the Raptors to kind of watch through Summer League. That comes up in a couple weeks here. Did you have any quick or initial thoughts of looking at that roster for Summer League?
Overall, I think it's going to be a fun team to watch. I think, honestly, looking at this whole team, I think Jacoby might be the one to kind of take charge overall this team, because he did average, I think it was 8.6 points last year. So I think this year he might take a step up, and this might be the first kind of glimpses we're seeing that. I'm really high on Jacoby Walter, so looking forward to seeing how he plays with the rest of these guys, and if there's a number one that stands out in this pack.
Yeah, and just to note also, a guy like Colin Castleton or AJ Lawson, I think could be there too. Obviously, this is fluid and things are going to change. But to your point, I think that's what's interesting about Summer League is that you get to see these guys in different contexts, especially with the ball in their hands more, trying more higher level stuff versus like when you're in the NBA rotation, you're playing differently. You're not necessarily getting to do as much out there, which is why like G League stints and everything are so important to kind of get those reps. A guy like Jameson Battle just showed how his game could scale up and down in different situations, and that was a big part of why he was so successful, kind of getting that roster with the Raptors, roster spot that is. And look, I know when Colin Murray Boyles got drafted, people might have been surprised, but there's also been people who have been watching the tape and said like he looks more polished coming into the NBA than a guy like Scotty Barnes did. Yep. So like if you want to buy in on that upside of like maybe what can Colin Murray Boyles turn into? Can he be a number one type guy for the Raptors? This is going to be your first glimpse of it potentially. I don't expect him to exclusively run through CMB, but are the Raptors going to draw up stuff for him? Are they going to put him in situations to try things, maybe play make a bit, maybe be a offensive hub at times? I think so throughout this process. So I'm interested to see that as well. I think like we talked about with the main Raptors, this team should be very good defensively. Yes. I'm interested to see how they kind of work as a defensive unit with all these guys working together. And then, yeah, just like that upside of it is also going to be fun to look into as well.
Yeah, no, I agree overall. Like I'm going to be tuning into the Summer League, seeing how these guys do, because, Jamison Battle was also on my list, or like my radar as well, to see how he kind of incorporates with these guys. And just looking at the team alone, it looks super fun and super defensive as well. Like, so it's going to be a fun Summer League.
Yeah, and like again, my sleeper pick, Tate Jones. Again, Ana Waniwa, I think is how you say his first name. They signed him for Summer League. Obviously, the likelihood of them making much out of it is low. But again, like you just mentioned, Jamison Battle. We saw what he was able to do with the Raptors. Work from Summer League to an Exhibit 10 out of camp, to a two-way, and then a standard NBA teal, which I think as of July 10th will be guaranteed for this season. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And Tate Jones is he's a unique player to me because the burst and athleticism it isn't at the level maybe as some other NBA guys, like you don't see that twitch, but at the same time he is very good at weaponizing his footwork, his change of pace. He's a twitchy type of player, almost like I think somebody described as like herky jerky, kind of similar to like obviously he's not SGA, but like where how they can kind of like stop and go type of thing. I
Yeah.
like the way he uses his spin moves, and his jump shot's kind of funky. It's a very low like release where he starts. Like he charges up like very low and then comes into it, but he makes it a decent clip. I think it was like 35% in college. So he's an interesting player to me. If he can get his shot going, especially with Jared Rhoda not being in the mix, he could be coming behind Jameson Battle for those kind of small forward minutes. So that's another name I'm going to keep an eye on. But I think that wraps it up for us talking about draft stuff. Kyle, what do you say?
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much all the bases there. And, heading into the summer league, we'll be watching and seeing, making our notes and seeing, what goes on with these guys. And if there's anything kind of interesting that we see.
Yeah, for sure. And again, let us know down below what you made of the Raptors draft. Were you on board with it now that after the fact? If you were surprised initially, do you hate it? Do you love it? Let us know down below what you're thinking about the Raptors draft. But now we're going to move on to the big news that shocked a lot of people. Even though technically you might have seen it coming, it probably wasn't how you expected it to go down. But Masai Ujiri and the Raptors have parted ways ahead of the final year of his deal. MLSE CEO and President Keith Pelley spoke after the news dropped, and he basically mentioned how there was an idea of change being needed. And he said it was his decision, but it was backed by the board. So essentially, Masai is now no longer the president of the Toronto Raptors. He leaves with a 545 and 419 record since he joined in 2013, fifth best in the NBA. And then obviously the 2019 championship. But it is also to be said that since winning that title, things have kind of declined in the other direction. The Raptors' asset management hasn't necessarily been the best since. They've missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. They just went 30-52. And MLSE decided, you know what, like your contract's coming to an end. Let's just cut this short and move on from each other. Kyle, I guess initially, obviously this has been covered extensively by a lot of other people, but just your quick thoughts and reactions, and maybe if there's anything else you wanted to mention that somebody may not have.
Yeah, so like for me, like it was, I didn't know how to feel about it when I first saw the news break. I didn't know if it was, a basketball decision or was this a business decision? Like if people kind of get what I'm saying. Overall, though, like, Masai was great for the city. He brought in a new culture. He helped us win that. He was pivotal in the 2019 championship. Getting a guy like Kawhi, making the hard decision of trading DeRozan, being the one to be able like to put that decision forward. And I'm not going to blame him and put it on, say that like when Kawhi left, that wasn't his fault. That's kind of why the Raptors started that decline towards, kind of where we are now. But overall, he did some things. We're happy to have him here. He would be a legend in the city forever. But I'm not going to sit here and kind of bash, Rodgers, whoever else for getting rid of him, because there's not much we can do now. Like it's not going to bring him back. I'm optimistic to see who we get to replace him going forward. It's kind of like you were talking about earlier. They want to establish a new identity. I just hope whoever they get, is well respected, knows what they're doing. I don't know if they're going down the Bobby Webster route because I think he wanted an interview, I believe, for the position, but I don't know who else they're even considering for this role. But it has to be someone that kind of, I hope, aligns with our ideals and what we want to do going forward. And it's not just we're happy with getting a playoff spot. We want to build this team to seriously contend. And I hope, they have the ideologies to do that and, the mindset to make tough decisions when we need to and, builds relationship with the players. Because overall now it's kind of looking scary because Giannis might not be too happy with the Bucks, and having a guy like Masai would be great, but I don't know. Overall, I'm just going to keep an optimistic viewpoint going forward. Like, I can't be too sad about it. Like, it is sad to see him leave, but I don't want to just harp on him going. Hopefully, we bring in someone that does a good job.
Hey, man, if you're wanting Giannis on this team, look, apparently Giannis's agent is being considered as the Raptors president, or at least there's been a name that's been thrown out there. So that could be a fun connection. But just to give the spark notes of who else might be in the mix, the Raptors are using CAA, I believe it's the Collective Arts Agency out of California, to kind of spearhead the search for a new president. And to be clear, the Raptors will have a new president. I know there was some questions about, like, with Keith Pelley coming in and MLSE kind of shifting things. They got rid of Brandon Shanahan with the Maple Leafs. The person, I can't remember, I think it's Bill Manning. He was president of the Argos and TFC. He's also gone. And those guys, as far as I'm aware, are not being replaced. It's just going to be Pelley, who's going to be kind of like the highest in command ahead of the GM. But for the Raptors, he has stated they are going to want a president because his background in basketball business is a little less familiar. And obviously his words were the Raptors are in the midst of a rebuild and he wants somebody there to see it through. So the Raptors are very much going to have a president again. They are replacing Masai Ujiri, not just getting rid of the role like some of these other teams under MLSC. And names that have been popped up, I believe if you have time, check out Esparahani's video on YouTube. He goes over this in more detail. Guys like Bob Myers, who is obviously an architect for the Golden State Warriors. Dwayne Casey's name come up. He's taking kind of a front office role with the Pistons after retiring as a coach. I think Steve Nash's name was thrown in there, so that will be something interesting to keep an eye on. But as far as like what this decision, I guess, means from both ends, Kyle, you mentioned it, like you weren't sure if this was a financial decision or a basketball fit decision. I'm very much in the camp. This was based on finances and control. That was a big thing. Obviously, the final year of his deal, guy was making $50 million, and it wasn't likely based on the direction of the team and what was happening that the Raptors felt like they needed to justify, or MLSC felt like they needed to justify paying Masai that much or more to spearhead this thing when they could probably find a facsimile of that where for a lot less. Again, if you hire Bobby in that position, you give him a raise, sure, but you're probably not paying him that much, which is something MLSC probably took into account. And I wouldn't necessarily think it's a basketball decision because they extended Bobby Webster. They extended a lot of the other executives who were in lockstep with Masai in these decisions. So if they weren't necessarily happy with the basketball of it all, I don't really think they keep the rest of the front office and just let Masai go in that situation. So that part of it is interesting to me. And also they let Masai be a part of the draft. I think he asked for that. He asked to leave after. But like if you didn't like the guy's basketball decisions, you probably wouldn't let him do that and then leave after. So I think this was very much about the contract situation and the fit overall. And part of me also believes that Keith Belly, he wants to be an architect here. He left, I think he was the CEO of like the European PGA Tour. He has old ties to like Rogers and Bell Media and stuff. But then he comes back here, comes back to Canada. And I think a big part of Pelly being with MLSC is he wants to be somebody who has his fingerprints over this new era in Toronto. Again, Brandon Shanahan no longer there with the Leafs. Masai's not there. He wants to be involved in this process a little bit. And I think somebody of Masai's cachet and especially influence is probably going to take some of that away from it, take some of that shine possibly if the Raptors kind of figure this out. So I think that is something that may have been a part of this as well. But overall, I think the contract situation was the biggest thing. And then also, truthfully, 13 years is a very, very long time for a sports executive. By today's standards, especially, like you look at a guy like Bob Myers, and he wasn't with the Warriors that long, and he built a freaking dynasty. Yeah. So I think it's just sometimes when you look at sports and how rapidly they change and evolve, voices do sometimes need to be changed. I'm not necessarily saying I love the way it happened and how Masai's tenure ended, but I understand how 13 years felt like a really long time, and there was just kind of like a need based on where their contract situation was at. The last thing I'll say is it does suck how it went down. Like, truthfully, like I think that's my biggest thing, just how it all came to an end. It felt very unceremonious. It felt like it wasn't a service to what Masai did for this city. Quite honestly, he is a Toronto Hall of Famer as far as I'm aware in terms of what he was able to provide. I always go back to DeMar DeRozan being one of the first players to choose Toronto, want Toronto. And Masai was similar in the sense that he reminded the city of its greatness. This is a fan base that it's one of the biggest, largest metropolis cities in the world. And it feels like a small market in the NBA because of its lack of free agencies, lack of like looking at it as a good hub or destination landing spot, whatever you want to call it. Masai was constantly reminding the city of its greatness. Yep. He was like talking about us like, we're going to win here, which he proved right. He knew this team had the potential. He knew the city had the potential to kind of attract people in the future. And the cultural like kind of like turnaround that happened for these guys under Masai Ujiri was nothing short of phenomenal. Like you had guys who were being like regretting being drafted to Toronto to then being excited because of like the Drake effect or the team winning or the championship pedigree. Like all of that was under Masai Ujiri. And for it to end the way that it did without him being able to have a proper goodbye. And then his last press conference, he talked about how he wants to win a second championship so bad because the first one was ruined because of that whole situation with the security guard and all the stress about Kawhi possibly leaving, which he ultimately ended up doing. He wanted to be able to savor a championship in this city a lot more than he got to last time. So not being able to get that and have that storybook ending, I think that was the biggest thing for me that I was really upset about.
Yeah, I saw Will Lou talking about it too, how, it was super upsetting that he really didn't get to enjoy that first championship at all, like as much as we did, because whatever happened over there, And it just sucks that this came out of nowhere. We didn't get to really say our goodbyes to him because he did so much for this city. A lot, everybody in this city knows who Masai is, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like even casuals to the sport, everyone knows who Masai is. He means a lot to these players. He formed connections. He made the tough decisions, and he really is going to be missed. But overall, we appreciate everything Masai did for the Raptors. We appreciate, calling DeRozan and telling him he was traded for Kawhi. We appreciate him doing those things for us. When I think he even said himself, he was pacing in his room for like an hour straight. He didn't want to do that call, but he did what he needed to do. Bringing in the other guys, building that 2019 championship team, helping draft Scotty Barnes, building this team for the future, at least getting the core we have now currently. So it sucks to see him go, and I wish him luck if he does, go somewhere else, or if he does become the president of another team. I'm wishing him the best and hoping he wins a championship. If he does continue to stay in the NBA, or if he just wants to take some time off, he does deserve it as well. But wishing him the best, and we love Masai for everything he did here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also interested to see because, you talk about it, a big part of his legacy in the city and just for basketball was his philanthropic efforts as well with Basketball Africa Academy, Giants of Africa, just like what he was able to provide for his home continent and just all the opportunities and resources for growing basketball there, and how that a lot of that was tied to the Raptors as well. Like the Raptors directly benefited from that through the I guess the path of Pascal Siakam and how he was able to find the game, develop his game, come here and be that homegrown story for the Toronto Raptors and obviously be a contributor to the championship. So now seeing maybe he decides to kind of just I guess commit his efforts to that. Maybe he tries again. I look at a team like the Atlanta Hawks. They're looking for a president as far as I'm aware right now. And they're a team that have been linked to Masai before. That could be interesting as well. But overall, no matter what this guy does, his legacy in this country, in this city is set. It is one of great prominence. It is one of motivation. It is one of inspiration. Masai Ujiri made this city believe in its basketball team, especially at a time when that was at an all-time low, I think, for the most part.
Yep.
So for that, we thank you, Masai Ujiri, and we're just going to have to see what comes next for the Toronto Raptors. I'm personally of the camp that I think I would like to see Bobby Webster get a bit of a chance here. Like you said, Kyle, he did ask for an interview. It seems like a natural progression for him, especially because he's been with Masai in lockstep. So he's been in the same position himself for quite some time now. So maybe for him, it's a new challenge. And if you saw Michael Grange's recent article on Sportsnet where he talked about the Raptors free agency stuff, he talked about how Bobby Webster might bring a different vision in some regard than Masai Ujiri, maybe a bit more shrewd in the sense of thinking long and short term together. He mentioned in that article, Grange did that Bobby and Masai kind of differed on how to handle Pascal Siakam's extension. Masai was the one that basically said that look, I don't think it makes sense with Scotty's timeline. I'm ready to kind of hit the reset button here in terms of fit and whatnot. So getting kind of Siakam out the door without that extension, where it seemed like Bobby was more of the camp of let's get the guy on the extension, let's sign him, see if it works a little bit. If it doesn't, we can trade this asset that's under contract and not have that expiring worry to it. So we're not kind of getting less value out of it. So in that regard, I know hindsight's 2020, but maybe Bobby had a point, and maybe that would have worked out a bit better for the Raptors had they done it that way. I know there's a lot of fans that felt like that should have been the way the Raptors went about it. So there is something to be said about Bobby wasn't he wasn't Masai's puppet or anything. He was thinking his own things. They obviously made decisions together. So if Bobby's willing to kind of provide some different vision in that sense, that'll be interesting at least. So I want to give Bobby a shot there.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely interested. That would have been super interesting to see, if we did sign Siakam to the extension, how the butterfly effect, what would have happened to the Pacers this year. It would have been, but it's great to hear that because he's not just kind of echoing what Masai does. He's his own man and he has his own ideas for this team. And it's not it's not going to hurt this team, and he has his own vision as well. And working alongside Masai too, I feel like he knows this core, he knows where this team has to be and what he wants to do. So I'm all for giving him a shot. He's been around this team, he knows kind of the culture over here, he's been working in the franchise. So maybe I'm down more to go with him instead of maybe a Bob Myers, but I wouldn't be against a Bob Myers as well. But whoever we bring on, I'm just curious to see and excited to see.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Kyle. And let us know down in the comments below how you felt about Masai Ujiri's tenure in Toronto coming to an end and what you're looking forward to with the next president of the Raptors. But Kyle, let's shift our focus now to free agency. And the shopping window has officially opened in the NBA. And for the Raptors, they did not enter with a lot of money to kind of like go on a shopping spree here. Look, it's been covered by a lot of other people. If you haven't checked it out, Samson Folk with Blake Murphy of Sportsnet on the YouTube channel go over the Raptors cap/roster situation. But more or less, they entered free agency with the ability to probably sign one player for their one roster spot with a veteran minimum contract at best, barring any trades or cutting guys like Lawson or Castleton. And so at the time of recording, the Raptors haul in free agency is a Garrett Temple, who I believe is going into his age 37, 39 season, something like that. Garrett's old. We know this.
Mhm.
And he signed a 1 year, $3.6 million deal. And then the Raptors needed a backup big, obviously, and they got that in, like we mentioned before, Sandro Mamukilashvili. I think that's a Georgian last name. If it's not, I apologize, Sandro. But he's a 26-year-old. He spent last season with the Spurs. I find his like upside as a floor spacing big to be interesting. We can get into that in a second, but Kyle, very quickly, what'd you make of the Raptors coming out of free agency? It's only been 2 days. They could be doing some other stuff, but for now, Garrett Temple, Sandro, what do you got?
I was going to also say, too, we did have a bit of breaking news. I think it happened when you were having your technical difficulties, but Jakob Pertl agreed on a 4-year, $104 million contract extension with the franchise.
So I did not know that.
He will pick up his player option at $19.5 million and add 3 additional years to his deal. So I'm guessing we like Jakob as our kind of cemented center of the future going forward, unless I don't think they plan to deal him if they're signing an extension. So great for him. He deserves his money. He was pivotal for the Raptors defense. You know, when he was out, like it really hurt the Raptors a lot.
Pivotal for the Raptors, everything. When he was out, they sucked. Like straight up. And like the numbers don't look as bad because of towards the end of the season, they were like, I guess, pseudo tanking or whatever. So he was probably out more than he needed to be. But to your point, the Raptors, by all reporting, weren't going to include Jakob in trade talks for Kevin Durant. They are trying to be better this season, but obviously because they trade for Brandon Ingram. So if you're a team trying to turn the corner, you need to have a better, I guess, a stout starting center, especially with all these other teams loading up on bigs. So Jakob Pertl, sticking him around, he was extension eligible, like you said. I think that was a tidy bit of business for like all parties involved. And now you have a lot more clarity on this roster with other moves, and like you know where some of your money is. I guess your eyes now turn to RJ Barrett and Ochai Agbaji. They're extension eligible, and let's see what the Raptors do there.
Yeah, like, and overall, you know, picking up a guy like Garrett Temple, great vet presence in the locker room. It is only for 1 year, so I don't mind it too much. A lot of the players respect him. He's got wisdom to help out you, especially with the younger players coming up. With Sandro too, he's going to be a great backup big option. Let's see, because he does have a good skill set. You know, he can shoot the 3. He can help provide some spark off the bench. And I think we were talking about it before. This kind of shows us where we're going on Boucher. I don't think, unfortunately, we probably won't be bringing Boucher back as much as I love Boucher. But, you know, I think with his skill set, he can actually help a contending team that's right there in the contending mix. Like, I know Raptors want to make the playoffs, but I don't think we're right there just yet. And I feel like he would be great for another team off the bench, maybe even starting. Who knows? But what he showed this year with his hustle, shooting from the 3-point, you know, making a difference when he checked into the game immediately. I'd love for him to see him get his money elsewhere and actually, you know, hit the playoffs, make a difference. But I feel like with this move now, signing Sandro and then extending Jakob to the extension, we kind of know where we're going now. And the question I want to pose to you right now too is, what we obviously didn't get our big fish, Kevin Durant or Giannis, and we're kind of locking down the deals now. What does this mean for the team going forward, you know, into the playoffs if they want to contend? Does someone like Scotty got to take the leap to an MVP status? What does this mean for the team? Not immediately, of course, but, you know, if we want to contend, what does this mean for the core and the team?
Well, I think for starters, I think everyone needs to take a slow step back from just automatically assuming the playoffs. Yeah. I am sorry to the Cody Wiles of the world who had the Raptors as a guaranteed top 6 team. I think I was optimistic about playoffs. I was more like the Raptors should absolutely be a play-in team. And I am more on that side right now, Kyle, kind of to your question on the outlook of the immediate future. Because, like, yes, you have the team like the Celtics and the Pacers who are going through massive injuries in Halliburton and Jason Tatum. The Bucks situation is completely flipped up with them adding Miles Turner. They waived Damian Lillard. Who knows exactly how that's going to work out? But you still have Giannis there. If he's healthy, they're going to be a good team. But then, like, a team like Atlanta loaded up, a team like Orlando
Mhm.
addressed their needs. I think they had a really good free agency period as well. Like Detroit is still in the mix. New York could be a playoff team for sure. Like the Miami Heat are always a scrappy team that's in that mix as well. Like I can't speak to this where like the Raptors should just assume they're good enough to be a playoff team right now after winning 30 games and not even making the play-in. Obviously, they weren't trying their hardest to win. But I think that's going to be a big thing here. And to your point, it's going to take a lot of internal development. Obviously, one of the biggest things beyond development is health. Like, get Emmanuel quickly out there for more than 33 games. Get Brandon Ingram actually on the floor.
Yeah.
Those are two guys that have a ton of gravity and honestly have the means and talent to solve a lot of these problems that existed for the Raptors last season. And I think a lot add versatility to this roster. So in terms of the picture for them, like the biggest thing is like, will Scotty develop more as a play finisher? Can he do some stuff at the rim like he was doing closer to his rookie season versus his mid-range stuff that he's worked on last year? The playmaking stuff, can he lift other players and kind of like get those guys to convert on more of the looks that he's generating? The guys around them, like Grady Dick, can he stay healthy and go through an entire season facing the physical rigors of the NBA? Jacoby Walter, what does he have in year two? So I think it is going to be a lot of internal development based. I think it's going to be a lot based on health. And when all those pieces come together, the Raptors are a compelling team. They have a lot of top-end talent, and you do see how they can work their way into the playoff picture. But it's one of those things where, like, I don't care what it says on paper right now. Like, they really do have to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, like again, I've always kind of illustrated anytime we've talked about it that we have not seen this team with Brandon Ingram. We've seen this team play together before, but we have not incorporated Brandon Ingram to this offense yet. We don't know what this team looks like with Brandon Ingram. We don't know if Scotty takes a backseat offensively to Brandon Ingram. Is Scotty who's going to be handling the ball majority of the time? Is it going to be a guy like IQ, Scotty, Brandon Ingram? Like, how is he going to do? Like with RJ as well too. Like there are so many different factors going into our starting five. It's just so hard to be like, yeah, we're a guaranteed top 6 team. Because again, like it or not, health is a part of this game too. And like you're saying, we have to stay healthy. If we don't stay healthy, that top 6 doesn't happen. The play-in might not even happen either if we don't stay healthy. So for me, I'm keeping my hopes low going into it. We did just lock down Jakob. We made whatever moves we needed to make. Now it's kind of, all right, this is what the team looks like. What is our goal going into the season? I think it should be at least play-in. I'm not going to say playoffs. I think at least play-in and then playoffs, maybe the season after, is kind of the natural progression of this team. But right now, I kind of want to figure out how this offense works with a fully healthy starting 5 and Brandon Ingram. And, we got to get our new rookies their reps overall. So I can't just go out and tell you, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. Because even if we do, I think the lack of experience with this team being so young and haven't been in the playoffs yet, we might get first rounded. Like it is a win if we do make it. But I just kind of want to see this team develop, gel, build the chemistry up, kind of figure out what our offense looks like, kind of figure out, like who would be, if it's a game-winning type situation or a clutch time situation, who's getting the ball? Is it just the open man gets the shot, or are we going to an Ingram? Are we going to Scotty to make the play? Like,
yeah,
all these things kind of need to be figured out before we start talking playoffs, because I don't even know if like who's going to start the season overall. But again, excited to see how the team develops, but there are a lot of questions for how this team is going to run.
Yeah, you understood why the Raptors were at like this team that was suddenly interested in a quote unquote big fish after the moves they made, the financial commitments they had, the top end of this roster. And you understood like that was a viable option for this team given the assets they could move to make it happen. But in the same breath, if they weren't able to do that, which by all indications they weren't, unless Giannis suddenly becomes available and the Raptors go for him, like the progression happening naturally and just going down this path after having already made a move last trade deadline for Brandon Ingram, like that made a lot of sense too. So like if you can, like the big splash didn't happen, yeah, but the path they're going down now is still quite viable. Like it is, to me, it's similar to an Indiana Pacers where like you make your internal development, you make a swing for a guy eventually, which they did with Pascal Siakam. Like at the time, it made them a lot better, but I don't think people were like, this is a team that's going to go to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, or a team that's going to make a finals runs, push the champions to 7 games. No one was saying that. I'm not saying the Raptors are going to do that, but like you have to start somewhere, which they did with that trade for Brandon Ingram, like to be able to turn that corner. And then you can kind of, if you believe in your scouting, if you believe in your development, you can take that path as well. I understand it's not as flashy or as exciting, but I think there can be a lot the Raptors can gain from this season, even if it is working out of the play-in, even if it is a first-round exit in the playoffs. That's all valuable experience for this relatively young team. So I think for them, it will be an absolute step forward. So I'm excited to see that. But going back to the free agent signings, I know we got a little distracted from that because of the Jakob Poeltl news. But I'm with you. Garrett Temple, obviously huge vet presence. I've seen some people a little upset about the idea that like you're basically paying $3.6 million for a coach. I get it, and because he's taking up a roster spot. But given the Raptors situation and the cap space they had available to them, I'm not exactly sure who else they were adding in that mix. I understand that they could have some space available to work with, but I think it's also important to keep in mind that how much $6 million does for the Raptors versus other teams isn't exactly the same. It's the same way that I view the vet minimum. Like, yes, the Raptors have the veteran minimum available to them. That's great. But the veteran minimum to go play in Canada, in a country you've never been, and pay the type of taxes you would here versus playing in like Texas, for example, like very, very different, right? So the Raptors aren't just offering the veteran minimum to the same guys with the same leverage as some of these other teams down. I know it's annoying to hear because we've always heard this argument about the Raptors and free agency, but it is something that comes into play here. So like, I wasn't expecting them to be able to outbid people necessarily with that extra money. And Garrett Temple, like you mentioned, just a huge veteran presence on this team. Scotty has spoken glowingly about the relationship and how Garrett Temple is a guy who can just go out there and prove what it takes to be a pro in this league for quite some time. But I think for that reason, I was okay with it. And then Sandro, like you mentioned, I like the upside here. The guy's only 26. He costs less than a better minimum for the Raptors over the next 2 years. His shooting juice, I'm here for. He shot 37% last year or on 160 attempts. 73% at the rim. He's basically the exact opposite in terms of shot diet when it comes to Jakob Poeltl. Like I think it was like around over 50% of Sandro's shots came at the 3-point line, and then around 30% were at the rim. Again, Jakob just doesn't shoot threes. So having a guy who's a floor spacing big, I think there's a bit of fun juicer. And again, pretty young. The upside's there. Again, the averages aren't going to wow you, right? The guy played 11 minutes a game, averaged 6 points, 3 rebounds, played 61 games, so relatively healthy too. So overall, it's not going to be anything that like blows your socks off here. But for what the Raptors had available to them and what they were able to make happen with just the one roster spot, I think they were able to check a couple boxes here with Sandro. And I'm kind of excited to see where he fits in with these young guys.
Yeah, overall, like, and I think, like, too, something I wanted to touch on was what you were talking about with Garrett Temple. Like, I feel like some people might think we're using kind of buzzwords when we say vet presence or whatever, but don't underestimate how important that is, especially to a young up and coming team with
that just lost their biggest leader, right? Like a young up and coming team that just lost their main voice.
Exactly. So, going forward, like, look at teams like Memphis or Charlotte that don't have a veteran presence. Like, look how kind of in scrambles they are there with like Ja Morant or even LaMelo. Like, they're playing great, but overall, like, the team chem is not there. That guidance isn't there. And when you draft new guys like a CMB or whoever else, like with Jacoby, all these up and coming guys we got coming off the bench, he can help mentor these guys. He can help show like, this is how life is in the NBA. This is what the playoffs are like. This is what, if you have any questions, come to me, especially losing Masai. All these guys are going to be asking them questions. So yeah, it might not be the greatest signing ever. And like, he might not put up 20 points for us, but what he does behind the scenes, how he helps these guys is going to be vital going forward to make this team a solid core and build up the chemistry as well too, because especially with the starting spots, a lot of guys are going to see their averages go up and down overall, and that might create some conflict overall. But having a voice in the middle overall is important. This is important, and it's not like we could have signed someone else with this money, so why not give it to a guy that the players respect and can come to, especially with having such a young core. And I just don't want to underestimate how important Garrett is to this team, even if he doesn't do the crazy things on the court, but what he does off the court is vital.
Yeah, and but like when he is out there, obviously it's not often. He played 28 games for the Raptors last year, and he averaged like, I want to say like not even, what is it here, like 8 minutes a game when he did play, right? But when he was out there, you noticed him. Like he was hustling, he was making effort plays, and that is like, again, you talked about that with Chris Boucher, who unfortunately just does not seem likely that he will be back with this team. And it's kind of a sad time to see Chris Boucher's tenure also come to an end with Masai. Just the last remnants of this championship core, really, or the last pillars, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, Bobby's still there, but a guy like Chris is the same way. Like when he's out there, you notice him, effort plays. And if you're losing Chris, also losing Garrett, I think would have been a big loss for this Raptors youngsters and like for the presence that they have available to them. I know like you said, Kyle, these words can seem buzzy, but they make a big difference. You mentioned the Charlotte Hornets. Last season, they added Taj Gibson, and everyone there was ecstatic that he was there and what he was able to provide. He played his 1,000th NBA game with the Charlotte Hornets, and it was a celebration for them, for these young guys to see what a pro can do when he
Mhm.
comes in and does the work and is able to be a presence for these guys. And like you looked at their draft, a lot of the guys that the Hornets took in this draft were described as high character people. And that was big for them because they didn't have a culture. They didn't have that kind of like that insulation of being like, when up and down things are happening, we're going to be able to sort through this because we're together in this. And now they're starting to build that in the same way. I think the Raptors need a lot of that right now. So for that reason, like the Garrett Temple move makes sense to me. Sandra moves fun as well. But Kyle, is there any other kind of thoughts you have on the Raptors free agency spot before we kind of talk about the general NBA?
Nothing really. Yeah, I feel like we did what we could have done with the money we had and with the things we need to do. We locked down Jakob, brought in Garrett, and this is as much as we could do. Like, excited to see the team going forward. I don't have any problems with it. Like, they did what they need to do.
Yeah, like if you walk out of free agency with your center rotation basically locked in, which was a big area for this need for quite some time, I'm happy with it. But like this doesn't have to be the end. Again, I know there's people who were a little disappointed it wasn't more exciting. RJ's extension eligible, OJ's extension eligible. Like, are those guys that are to try to kind of open up some space again? Colin Castleton and AJ Lawson, guys you can waive to create more roster spots and a bit of money here or there. Like, obviously, there's more to it. You'd have to see like what exceptions are available to the Raptors and what they're able to do. But there is options there if they wanted to do more than this. But if not, this team has done their work already, kind of leading into this point, and now it's time to see what they're able to make of it. But Kyle, there was interesting stuff around the rest of the NBA, to be quite honest. Like the Denver Nuggets, they made a trade. They signed a good backup center. The Nickeil Alexander-Walker, shout out Canadian from Toronto. The guy got paid by the Atlanta Hawks. Again, like we mentioned, Miles Turner, dude, he didn't just leave the Pacers. He went to a team in their division, to the Milwaukee Bucks of all teams. He got paid. Julius Randle back with Minnesota. We can go on and on. But like, what did you make of the start of free agency? Like, you can go with it as like winners or losers, teams that stood out to you. But like, where are you at with the general NBA and what'd you make what happened?
Well, just waking up this morning and seeing Damian Lillard got waived to make
I didn't even mention that.
Turner was insanity. But I did read a tweet saying this Damian's kind of happy though because he's still getting his money and he can go to a contender of his choice. So it's not kind of like they did him fully dirty. It is kind of dirty that they didn't tell him about this beforehand. So I don't see though, like I like the move with adding Miles Turner, but I don't know if this makes the Bucks like an immediate contender. I feel like Damian Lillard was very important to their offense, even though they weren't kind of clicking. But they still had time to mesh, and going forward, he was injured. But it is interesting. I feel like I can't say they're a loser yet, but I'm not too big on adding Miles Turner. I didn't think that's the way. If I'm the Pacers though, if I'm Halliburton, I'm heated. I'm insane.
Yeah, that's your guy.
We just lost my guy, bro. What are you doing? We just went to the finals and we just give it to one of our, not even just like another team in another conference, one of our rivals. I would be insanely heated. But overall, like free agency be going crazy. Like the Nuggets are trading Michael Porter Jr. Did not see that coming. I did not see that coming.
Big fan of that move, by the way.
Yeah, I am too. They had to do something. I feel like they felt like they're getting a little bit stagnant overall. Overall free agency has been kind of crazy, but that kind of stuck out to me immediately. I know it's like happened today, but I didn't see a world where Damian Lillard got waived, especially when he was injured. I'm kind of intrigued to see where he goes next. I don't think, I know Raptors fans will say we'll bring him here. I don't think we have the money for that. I don't think that's even a possibility. I think he probably goes to Miami where he originally wanted to be because he said he was.
Yeah, he's been linked back there again by a couple different reporters. I think Tim Reynolds said the Heat are obviously interested in him again.
Like, and he said he was depressed in Milwaukee because he originally wanted to go to the Heat. Like, so I think he probably ends up there. He's going to rehab over there. I don't think that makes them contenders when he does get healthy, because I feel like they still have to add a few more pieces overall. But right now, at least too, like, everyone's getting their money, it seems, and they're kind of locking out the Hawks, though. I don't know all their additions off the top of my head, but it feels like to me that I know Trey wants to make a deep playoff run at least. And if they didn't make any moves at all, I feel like we would have started hearing some rumors of him, not being the happiest of where he's been, because he's been there for quite a while now. And, seeing guys like Jalen Brunson or his other like draft counterparts make these deep runs and get into the playoffs, he's got to be a little bit disgruntled. So I feel like that's why they kind of went on that spree of beefing up the team, adding what they need. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Hawks do. But what's your biggest takeaways been so far in day 2 of free agency?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first one is the middle class of the NBA is kind of losing out here. With the way it's been so financially restricting, obviously you try to pay your top end guys and you get those guys. But like, look at a guy like Gary Trent Jr. He returns to the Bucks on a second minimum deal in a row because he's hoping that like next free agency there's more room and he can kind of squeeze in there and get paid or have that payday that he's chasing. This is a guy who shot over 40% from three, a great high volume 3-point shooter. He didn't really get paid all that well. There's a couple other examples of guys just like taking lower deals. I think of a guy like Daron Sharp, I'm kind of surprised he didn't even like talk to other teams in free agency. I thought he would have gotten some decent money. Granted, he did get a pay raise. He took like $6 million per year from the Nets for 2 seasons, but I feel like he could have gotten that much or more on another team. But because the market is dried up when it comes to these situations because of the aprons and whatnot, like it is making it hard for the middle class of the NBA to get paid like they used to. Like if you look back, obviously a couple of years ago, it was stupid how much some of these guys in the middle was getting paid. Let me just throw out a name like Timofey Mozgov, if you remember what that dude made. But like, I think that's something that stood out to me. But also like with the Bucks, like it was interesting. They use a stretch provision, which isn't something you kind of really see all that often to get off Damian Lillard's money. But like you said, Kyle, he was important to their offense, but the dude was probably just not going to play this year as he recovers from an ACL injury. And then when you hear all that noise about Giannis, like I get them trying to get busy and make some moves. They're still working. They signed Gary Harris. They brought back Gary Trent Jr. Again, the move for Miles Turner, a spacing big next to Giannis does really open up the floor. And also, they had to replace Brook Lopez, who left in free agency, who is now with the Los Angeles Clippers, who, by the way, I think that's a great move from them. Having Brook as your backup big behind Zubac, I think is going to be a lot of fun for the Clippers. But yeah, so I think like they knew they had to kind of do stuff here to keep Giannis interested, so it wasn't going to end up in that situation. And like you said, that's what the Hawks did. You were right. There have been reports that Trae was getting restless. He basically, I think it came out when Nickeil Alexander got his deal with the Hawks in the sign-and trade. It was reported that Trae Young was massive in that process. He was kind of pushing the Hawks to go after Nickeil Alexander-Walker because he knows the type of players that insulate his strengths and weaknesses. Trae is not a good defender. So if he has a lot of these like wing guys and like guys who can switch and be versatile defensively around him, that is awesome. Like you have Dyson Daniels, a defensive player of the year candidate. You have Zachary Wisachet, no slouch defensively. Now you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, another good two-way player. Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis, if he's healthy, he's a solid defender, especially at the rim. You drafted Austin Newell, another big. Another thing for them was adding size. So the Hawks kind of addressing their needs there. I think that was interesting as well. Like you're kind of seeing these star players figure out a bit of what they want. And then like out east, I just think the Eastern Conference as a whole just got better out of free agency. Yeah. Like the Orlando Magic, they already traded for Desmond Bane, added to their 3-point shooting needs that they just sucked shooting threes last year. So now you have Bane. And then also Tyus Jones is a great point guard for them. This is a team that like had no table setters really. And there's so much responsibility in Paolo Banchero to play and make for them to the point like I think they averaged like 20 turnovers a game or something like that. Like they just weren't good in terms of handling the ball. Adding a guy in Tyus Jones who's had a great assist to turnover ratio for much of his career to be a table setter for them. I think if you're trying to look at this from like the Raptors perspective, like the idea we're talking about buzzwords, right? Like the East is wide open. That phrase is being used so much, even by myself and other people. But like I think that's less the case. You don't have a clear pecking order now, but you do have a lot of teams in the mix here where like you can't kind of just like think if you're decent you'll get into the playoff picture. So I think with free agency and how it's gone, a lot of these teams did like I won't say load up, but they got better. And then my last one is like the Nuggets, man. I am just so in on the Nuggets. Like, keep in mind, this team was a Game 7, albeit blowout loss to the Thunder.
The champs.
They were in Game 7 with the champions.
Yes.
Like that. This season could have gone a whole lot different if Aaron Gordon didn't hurt his hamstring and they were still in that series. And Aaron Gordon had hit 2 game winners in that series. If he was that same Aaron Gordon, who knows how that would have gone. Yeah. And then to take Michael Porter Jr., who was great for them. He was reliable, albeit he did hurt his shoulder in that series against the Clippers. Wasn't himself towards the end there. But like, if you had Michael Porter Jr. on $40 million and turn him into Bruce Brown on a veteran minimum and Cam Johnson on like $20 million a year, like I think that's great. You get under the apron, you save some of your money there, and then they kept moving. They made some trades to bring JV in, so now you also have a backup big for Nikola Jokic. Jokic might actually enjoy coming to work for once. He might like showing up because he knows he has some relief. It's not DeAndre Jordan behind him or Zeke Naji behind him at the center spot. It's a really reliable minutes-eating big in Jonas Valanciunas. And also, Deron Holmes, their first-round pick from last year, who got injured, who's a very athletic, bouncy big, didn't play. He's going to be back as well.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a perfect move for the Nuggets. Don't get me wrong. They did take on risk. You gave the Nets a unprotected 2032 first. So that is obviously towards the end of the Jokic tenure if it's not already over by then. So it's going to be a little dicey. That pick could be valuable, but at the same time, you're willing to take that risk because you have a guy like Jokic.
Yes.
Your window is right now. And then you add some reliable two-way play in Cam Johnson. Like, with respect to MPJ, I think Cam Johnson is a much better defender than him. And he has a bit more playmaking juice. He's smaller. He's had some injury concerns. I think he played like 50-some games last year. So that's something you have to keep in mind with Cam Johnson. He's not the rebounder that MPJ was. But I think the biggest thing for this Nuggets team was depth, and they added it in Bruce Brown and Cam Johnson, just two guys who can play instead of one. And then you kind of also flip the JV thing into it. I think the Nuggets are ready to compete in this very loaded West. When you look at teams like the Thunder at the top, we didn't even talk about the Rockets. They were busy as well, adding Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella. They already re-signed some of their guys. Like, this is going to be a very, very fun Western Conference. I know it's rambled on all these teams here, but I think it's just like, you don't come out of it being like, wow, these names move, like your Kevin Durant to the world. I mean, I guess he did move, but like you were talking about like signing, like last year you saw a name like Paul George, obviously was a big name. And like LeBron James and Harden this year, they picked up their options, so they didn't move. So you thought maybe it's not that exciting. But I think a lot of very like winning moves happen.
Yes. It's a lot. I think a lot of people are trying to focus on, they want the blockbuster type trades. You know, we got spoiled with the Luka mid-season and things like that, and Kevin Durant getting dealt. But this is what wins team championships at the end of the day. When the Nuggets lost their depth, that's what kind of like held them from getting back to the promised land. They lost Bruce Brown, they lost the guys that helped bring them that championship. So them making these moves in the long run, sacrificing up in MPJ overall, it's a good thing. I'm with you. I'm right with you right there. I think this puts them right back into contending spot, right back into competing with OKC and teams like the Rockets overall. And we did mention guys like James Harden, LeBron picking up their options as well. I don't know. I got a problem with LeBron for doing that. Why aren't we taking pay cuts if we want to win overall? That's my goat. But come on, bro. I'm not trying.
Hey, but look, the Lakers aren't really trying to help him either, right? Like you're hearing reports that the Lakers are like they're trying to hold on to some of their moves for like 2027 or whatever, 2 years from now, when they can try to go after free agents. They don't want to mortgage the future, which I think, in my opinion, sounds stupid. Like, you're acting like Luka is 22 years old. This guy's 26. He's in his prime right now, while LeBron is still at an all-NBA level. No one's saying you have to give up all your first-round picks or anything, but like you guys, you need a center, and you got Jake LaRavia, great. You replaced Dorian Finney-Smith with Jake LaRavia, similar in terms of like position and like two-way play, I guess. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is a better defender, but we'll see what Jake does there. But like, you need a center. You haven't addressed it. You backed out of the Mark Williams trade, maybe astutely. We'll see how it goes in Phoenix for him. But like, this idea of like LeBron should take a pay cut to help this team out, when this team, by all accounts, isn't really ready to even invest around him and Luka together, I think is just like, I don't necessarily mind it, because LeBron's being in charge of his future by opting in. He also gets a no trade clause for this final season. And so if they want to trade him, they have to do it on his terms.
You have to go.
So that'll be interesting as well. So from his perspective, controlling where he ends his career, I think, is a smart move on his part. So I'm not totally against it, unless the Lakers were willing to kind of help this team now.
Yeah, like that's what I was looking at too. Like, I heard the rumblings of they might be interested in trading LeBron, which I wouldn't be against, honestly. Like, with the way the Lakers are moving right now, if they were to trade him to an actual contender where he can end his career, I'm praying to God this isn't like a Celtic Shaq situation or a Hakeem Raptors, where we get that LeBron pick.
LeBron's at an all NBA level right now. Like, I'm sure he'll be fine.
I'm hoping to God, bro, because if I see like a picture of LeBron in like a Golden State jersey just and the Wash anthem plays, that's my 13th reason, bro. But if they trade him to somewhere like a Golden State or somewhere that can actually contend, because right now clearly they're not serious, so I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind at all. Like, I wouldn't be heated if they did. I just would feel bad for Luka, because they're putting him in a position where he is the face of the franchise. He has to win now, but it's like they're giving him nothing to work with. They're giving him absolute. At least when he was on Dallas, they gave him things to work with. They surrounded him with the defense that worked to like what he needs to do to be successful. But overall, it's like, what moves are the Lakers doing to help us? Like we did
Go
move
get DeAndre Ayton. Like convince DeAndre that like
to come over here.
Yeah, like come here on a minimum contract or whatever it is, and like be the starting center. It. Give him like a 1 year or 2 year deal with a player option or whatever, and then be like, "Hey, DeAndre, you want to go get paid next year? Come play next to Luka Doncic, who's gonna make you look really freaking good, like you were with Chris Paul, like average 18 and 10 or whatever, and then go get paid later." Like, but like you were seeing reports that like, oh yeah, they're interested in DeAndre, but they were also interested in Clint Capella and Brook Lopez. Those guys are gone, and the Lakers are still here looking for a starting center.
Yeah, I think Austin Reeves declined his player option, or was it an extension because he wants to get paid more?
He rejected an extension offer, which I think the Lakers had to do their job in offering it to him, but I think both sides knew he was going to reject it. I read an article on The Athletic where like he's going to be able to get more later in an offer from them or whatever, or even just obviously in the open market. Yeah. So like this is an undrafted guy we're talking about here. Like he's going to want to maximize his earnings. Yeah. So I think it made sense for both parties.
Yeah, I think it did too. But like if we don't do anything and he raises his stock, I could see a future where he leaves the team. So
for sure.
And then this is probably LeBron's final season. I feel like this is it for LeBron. Like I don't think he goes another season. I think he does retire. Like I don't see why he plays another one after this, because I saw the report the other day. The Savannah was already getting on him about playing another season. So I feel like this could be it. And the fact that we're not surrounding him and Luka with talent is literal insanity to me. But it just hurts to see. It just hurts to see.
You think LeBron would retire without telling the entire universe first? LeBron's gonna have a retirement tour.
He's gonna do the little like with what he did with Sut when he was going to Miami, the little talk show.
Yeah, LeBron. If LeBron's retiring, I think everyone's gonna know about it before it happens. If I have to guess.
You think it depends?
He's not pulling a Tim Duncan and just retiring. I don't know.
And just leaves the NBA.
Yeah,
it depends. Like if they don't make any moves, like then after free agency ends, he'll just be like, "All right, I'm retiring the season," or like,
no. I don't think he'll do that. Like again, Bronny's still there. Like he obviously, again, I think he's a guy who cherishes that. Like any opportunity he gets to play with his son or be around together in an organization, I think would be something he's keen on. I think I'm pretty sure Bronny's deal was guaranteed when he signed it. So like, I doubt they do anything with him. So yeah, like I think with Bron, that's just the big thing is like, is this team? I think he said in his statements through Rich Paul that like he understands the future is important, but like, is this team also understanding they have an opportunity in the near future while LeBron is still at an All NBA level? Like we think LeBron is super talented. He's still All NBA, but truthfully, he is also regressing year over year. So like, while you still have a bit of that juice left as a top player in this league, are you making the most of it? And if you're not, I think he thinks, and I would agree, that it's wasting an opportunity because, again, Luka Doncic is entering his real prime here right now. The West is loaded, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, like, you have two top 10, top 15 players in the league right now, and you don't have to go swing for the fences to make this team better. Like, we're asking you to find a starting center who can play 30 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night, whatever have you. And there was options there available, and so far they haven't been able to get one.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier too with the Nuggets. Like, we don't need stars to come join the team. We just need depth, and we need people to complement like Luka and LeBron's game. We need people, we need defensive players, we need shooters, and it's like we're at a center and we're just not doing anything. We're just sitting there and we're discussing whether we should trade LeBron. So I feel like the Lakers need to get their priorities straight overall and start hitting up a guy like DeAndre Ayton, start hitting up other free agents. I don't know what they have in plan, but if they cannot run it back this season with the same roster from last year. Your mic's muted.
You missed it. I was gonna say they're re-signing Jackson Hayes. Don't worry, they'll be fine. He's, the was it Colin Cowherd? The Colin Cowherd like Ben Simmons. Hey LeBron, it's fine. Ben Simmons is here. They're gonna do that with Jackson Hayes now. But hey, look, I think we talked a lot more on the Lakers than I actually thought we ever would on this podcast. But I will say they're monopolizing on exciting white boys. You got Austin
Yeah.
Reeves, Luka Doncic, and now Jake LaRavia. Like, yo, at least they got that going for them. The white boys in Cali are up right now.
They're up. They're winning right now. Let's hope we can get to the playoffs and actually do something, because I don't think I can take another season.
They were
of
the third seed last year. You gotta give them that.
I mean, yeah, but then we went and had a horrific playoff like.
Yeah, you
run
got
against
belt
the
to
Timberwolves.
ass from the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Like, everyone was seeing Lakers in 5, man. That series was hell for me to watch. Just going, I can't take another season, bro. We need to make some moves. I can't take it again. I can't do that again.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We spend too much time talking about the Lakers here and just free agency stuff. We thought we were gonna be done this in like 40 minutes. It's been an hour and 10.
It's been an hour and 10
We did also have some technical difficulties, but that's my life here with technology lately.
Mm.
Hopefully we're able to sort that out in post. If not, we do apologize for any issues you have watching or listening to this. But we're gonna wrap it up here, Kyle. Again, a lot has happened in the past couple of days. But I think the big thing to take out of this is you're starting to get a lot more clarity on the picture when it comes to the general NBA, when it comes to the Raptors specifically. Again, in some ways, that's ironic for me to say because you did just lose your president, so maybe that's not clear at all. But like, you have an understanding of this team is very much rebuilding. I think that's especially safe to say now with Masai being gone. Like they are really trying to like sort out their priorities moving forward. But in terms of a basketball sense or roster sense, there is a lot of clarity there now, especially after you re-sign a guy in Jakob. So we'll see what happens with them there. We'll obviously be back to react to all of it in the coming days. I'm personally, again, just super excited for Summer League, seeing what these young guys can do, who stands out and comes out from that experience. That's happening on July 10th. So I only like about a week and a couple days away for the Raptors and the rest of the league. So we're going to get into that. But if you made it this far through all the nonsense we talked about, to all the rambling that happened, we do want to thank you for joining us here on Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. Again, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to Raptors Republic YouTube channel as we bring more opinions, analysis, and content to you guys. Again, like guys like Samson and S will obviously be reacting to a lot of this news as well. We'll hopefully have Cody back. Hopefully at some point the three of us can do this together and kind of yap a little bit about everything that's going on. But let us know down below what you made of the Raptors offseason so far. But that being said, for myself, for Kyle, and for Cody, we will see you next time when we run it back. Peace.